We also are joined today by Teresa. She's with TriCap in Minnesota. That community action partnership is a current SNAP E&T provider. So she's going to kind of put what we're talking about today into some real world context, which helps. I mean, sort of learning about SNAP E&T is great, but the cool thing about this cohort is that we've paired folks together that are action providers, so they can offer some great peer sharing. We want these webinar series to be interactive as much as possible, so feel free to ask questions out loud or use the chat. Don't feel like you're interrupting us or anything. We would love to hear from you guys. So this is your opportunity to learn and ask these experts questions. So without further ado, I think I'm going to turn it over to Susan and Bob.
Thank you, Stephanie. We'll go ahead and get started. So welcome, everybody. Like Stephanie said, today we're talking about serving your clients via SNAP E&T. We're going to talk a lot about why we think that the people you're serving are SNAP E&T people. And so we're going to try to draw those lines to connect and talk about who SNAP E&T participants typically are. We'll provide some general demographic information, and then really get into how you're working with those clients and connecting them to SNAP and to SNAP E&T. So a couple just quick things, some housekeeping. Please stay on mute during presentation time, but feel free to unmute and chime in during Q&A. We're actually going to have some Q&A dispersed throughout the presentation, so we hope you participate and join in when you have questions. You're also welcome to put questions in the chat if speaking up isn't going to work for you for whatever reason. Feel free, we'll be monitoring the chat throughout the time. Keep your cameras on if possible. I'm going to ask everybody right now to rename yourself in Zoom, and that just gives us an opportunity to see who's here and where you're from. And if you don't know how to do that, it's quite simple. So if you hover over your little screen in Zoom and you see those three little dots, click on those three little dots and select rename. And then you can just type in your name and then comma and your organization. So feel free to do that as we're getting started. And then we're going to do some polling, and we're going to use slido.com, which is kind of a cool feature that allows us to poll within our presentation. But it does require that you be ready with your phone or your desktop browser to navigate to Slido to participate in the poll. And we're going to do a practice run just so everybody's warmed up, knows how to do it. And nobody has to kind of fumble through that process when we're in the middle of the presentation. So without further ado, here's some quick instructions on how to navigate to Slido. You can open a brand new browser. Don't close out of Zoom. We want you to stay connected to us. You can do that either on your phone or in a new desktop window. You can also, when we get to the Slido poll, you can navigate your phone camera to the QR code that's going to show up on the screen. And then also, once we get to the poll screen, which is next, there's going to be a code that you type in once you get to slido.com, and that will connect you to this particular poll. So we're going to start out with a warm-up poll question. So everybody can see they can navigate to slido.com either in a new window or point your phone at the QR code. And you're going to enter 772783. We're going to ask you a really tough question. We're going to go really deep here. Are you a cat person or are you a dog person? Oh, we've got one for dog. Dog, both. I like it. I'm going to just say I am a cat person. Mostly I have a cat. You might hear my cat snore while I'm presenting today. She's 17 and a half, so she gets to do whatever she wants whenever she wants.
This is Bob. I'm a dog person, and you might hear my dogs barking.
So mostly dog people in this room. Good to know. Some both. No strictly cat people so far. That's okay. Dog times 3. Both dogs and cats. So everybody's getting acquainted with Slido, not too difficult. Again, we're going to have some polls throughout the presentation today, and so you'll be being prompted to respond to different questions. So keep that Slido window open, however you've gotten to it. Definitely dog people. I'm going to say, you know, along with some both, but predominantly we are a dog crowd here. Good to know. Good to know. That has serious implications for how we share this information. Ooh, a Sphinx cat. I know a couple Sphinx cats. They're interesting little creatures.
Right here,
Okay.
he looks like a chupacabra.
Yeah. All right. We're going to move ahead, but all you dog and some cat people. All right, so the agenda today, we're going to do a very quick review. We're going to talk about the characteristics of SNAP F&T participants, and I'm going to do that by sharing a few slides from a Mathematica study. Then we're going to talk about how SNAP F&T can benefit community action agency clients. We'll get into a little bit about referral mechanisms and SNAP F&T eligibility. We're going to talk about the importance of partnering and engaging with your SNAP F&T agency and connecting participants to SNAP, and partnering with your local SNAP agency. So that's mentioned twice in the agenda. There's a little bit of it that we talk about when we talk about referral mechanisms. So it's a very important aspect of SNAP F&T. So just to give context, we are in session number 2 of these 4 sessions that we're offering. We did a little bit of last minute adjustment, you'll see. So today we're talking about serving people via SNAP F&T. We previously talked about offering SNAP F&T services and aligning your programs with SNAP F&T. The next topic, which was originally scheduled for about 2 weeks from now, we've actually moved out to January, give you all a little bit of a break. So we'll be talking about assessing funding in the new year, and then we'll be finding a time to build capacity, to talk about building capacity for SNAP F&T. And Steph is going to reach out to everybody to communicate that, but just a little preview that's coming up, and we did make that adjustment. So to quickly review, last time we met, we talked about how your services aligned with SNAP F&T, and this is just a reminder. You know, in that left-hand column, those are SNAP F&T components, and in the right-hand column, these are services that we've seen listed on your websites actually, and just knowing about your programs, about what you do and how they align with SNAP F&T. So that's really what we talked about. And so today, again, we're going to talk about how you work with the people that you serve, and how they are likely often going to be SNAP F&T eligible. And so it's kind of, you know, these people are your people. And so we're really talking about alignment in that respect. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So again, you know, we use this Venn diagram a lot to talk about just SNAP F&T alignment in general, and how these 4 kind of elements come together to really, you know, where they overlap is really where you're well aligned with SNAP F&T as a provider. So when you have capacity, the right funds, the right services. And again, today we're going to be talking about the participants. So who is eligible for SNAP E&T? Quick refresher. It's SNAP recipients who are receiving SNAP in the month they participate in a component, except for job retention, which we can talk about, or we have talked about a little bit. They are not receiving TANF cash assistance, and they're able to work upon program completion. So that means that, you know, work is a viable outcome for these folks. So several years now, back in 2015 and 2016, Mathematica did a study for FNS. FNS funded the study to understand better the characteristics of SNAP E&T participants. And this is just sort of how they did the study and what they were wanting to reveal. So they wanted to describe SNAP work registrants, which work registrants is kind of the largest group you could consider eligible for SNAP E&T. It's those who are deemed able and needing to work as part of their SNAP eligibility status. They did 2 surveys. They actually talked to participants, so SNAP and SNAP E&T participants, as well as SNAP E&T providers. And what's interesting, and I'll get into this a little bit more, is sometimes the responses were a little different from the participant perspective compared to the provider perspective. And I don't think that's going to be surprising to folks too much, but it is important to note out. And they talked to 15 focus groups in 5 states. So that was a total of 140 SNAP E&T participants. We've linked to the full study down here. So if you are interested, you can go look at the full study. It's interesting and helpful to kind of understand just who we're working with and what are their characteristics. So this first demographic slide shows, again, you know, this is a comparison of SNAP participants in general who would be eligible for E&T and actual E&T participants. It's fairly similar. E&T participants are slightly less female. They trend slightly to have more African-American representation. We think there might be I think the study indicates that there might be a correlation between able-bodied adults and having higher African-American representation in that population. So they think that might be the reason to have the difference in the racial breakdown. High school diploma, slightly higher than the broader work registrant population. And age is slightly younger for E&T participants than the broader work registrant population. So this just gives you an idea of how the demographics compare to work registrants in general and E&T participants specifically. Educational attainment. So fewer than a third of SNAP E&T participants have education beyond high school. That kind of gives you an indication of how they compare to the rest of the population. So we're looking at folks that are largely lacking a lot of post-secondary education. Labor force attachment. So what this shows is, you know, a lot of SNAP E&T participants, it's not that they don't have work experience. It's not that they haven't been attached to the labor force recently, but what we know is that a lot of them don't have consistent work experience. That might be an indicator of kind of what they're needing in terms of employment and training services. And then this is skills that were determined needed for employment. And this was a provider response. They often indicate that individuals need and lack soft skills and basic literacy and math skills to gain employment. I didn't put in the participant slide, but I will say there was a discrepancy. You know, participants don't always respond saying that they need soft skills. You know, so those types of skills are sometimes not always self-reported or recognized. And so that there's kind of a difference in participants are wanting work experience and basic skills, but providers recognize that they also need these soft skills to become employed. And both are true, right? So again, you know, I did put in this slide that, so the barriers to employment, again, lacking basic skills and minimal work experience, kind of trend high. So other characteristics of SNAP participants, in addition to the demographics, when they're seeking food assistance from the SNAP agency, or with reverse referral, which we'll talk about a little bit more, that's what they're looking for, is to feed themselves. So they're not always really thinking about their employment goals when they go to apply for SNAP. So that's something to consider when you're working with people who are connecting to a program through getting SNAP benefits. They're experiencing food scarcity, financial stress. They're likely might be concerned about the stigma to receiving, you know, welfare, a concern about sharing their private and household information. They're likely unaware of the requirements for SNAP E&T participation, which, you know, in some areas there could be some mandatory participation requirements connected to their benefits. And they're likely to be connected to other social services. So this is kind of important to understand kind of who, you know, where these participants are at when they're engaging with the SNAP agency or getting introduced to SNAP E&T. And I'm sharing this information about the scarcity mindset. So this is a concept that was explored in a book called Scarcity by Sendel Mulanathan and Eldar Shafir in 2013. If you haven't read this book or looked at it, it's a really intriguing concept that really talks about, you know, where putting yourself kind of in the perspective of if you're experiencing a deficit of any sort. So they talk about scarcity and people's mental bandwidth. And so, you know, if you put your shoes in the perspective, put yourself in the shoes of a prospective participant experiencing scarcity, you know, suppose you're thinking about receiving an eviction notice or being late on your bills or worrying about how to fix your car, living from paycheck to paycheck, so counting the days until your next paycheck, worrying about childcare and how that's necessary for you to enroll in training or go to work. All of these things are, you know, factor into a scarcity mindset. And what we might assume about participants is that they're thinking thoughtfully and rationally and long-term, that they'll carefully go through, you know, letters and information that they're given about their benefits. But what we know is that when you're in a state of scarcity, it has a profound impact on your bandwidth to make rational decisions. And what we might assume is that everybody is sort of making these rational decisions, but what their research shows is that we all make irrational choices when we're in a mindset of scarcity. And it doesn't have anything to do with somebody's character or morality. It's all people start to act irrationally when they're in a state of scarcity. And the example I like to use for myself is when I go to the grocery store when I'm really hungry. I don't think about, you know, the nutritious options that I need to choose for my family and myself. I'm looking at the bag of dill pickle potato chips and how good they sound right there. That's not necessarily a rational thought process. But that's something to consider when people are in a state of scarcity, that they're not thinking about these long-term choices that they need to make. So something to think about, and probably that you're already aware of when you're working with your clients, and that they're often probably in this mindset. And, we introduce these concepts to really just reflect back on how you frame then conversations to talk about employment and training, and sort of making these longer term decisions, and consider where their mind is when they're coming to you, and how you might approach them with that understanding of where they're at. So we're back to our poll. And first, before you can start typing your responses into this poll, but I'm also going to ask Teresa to talk about the characteristics of the people that come to her community action agency as a SNAP E&T provider at TriCap in Minnesota. So thank you, Teresa, for joining in the conversation.
Yes, hello everyone. So I've been asked to share a little bit about our programming and a little bit about some of the characteristics of the clients that we serve. And I'm sure that all of you can make these connections as well. As I mentioned, I think at the last meeting, we are doing mostly like the reverse referral process, where we have established some of our state funded programming in asset, housing, and the workforce pillars. And we are identifying clients that we already have an established relationship with, which is really good for that trust issue, because we know many of the characteristics and experiences of our clients that they're going through at the moment are difficult, right? And I think that's really good to point out about the scarcity piece, because I would say a good number of our participants across our programs are in kind of that bottom part of the pyramid of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where they're really struggling with basic needs. And, they're struggling with food insecurity, they're struggling with education for their children in many different ways. They're struggling with homelessness. They're struggling with transportation, basic essentials around hygiene items and diapers for their children. And so we are just seeing a variety of different barriers that people are experiencing to employment. And so having that, build that relationship with them already in that other program, we're able to then open up the door for a conversation about SNAP E&T. Some of the other characteristics that we see that I just want to mention, I pulled statistics from last year's one of our programs in the workforce pillar called Rebuilding Lives. And it used to be known as the Minnesota Displaced Homemaker Program. And we recently changed the name statewide to the Minnesota Family Resiliency Partnership. And many of our clients are experiencing divorce, separation, death, disability of a spouse. And when they're coming to us, over 80% of our participants have indicated that they've experienced domestic abuse. So that is significant. We have a significant number of women of color. So we also have that statistical component that was mentioned in the Mathematica study. And a good number of our clients, participants in housing programs are also experiencing some of these difficulties as well. So yeah, hopefully that kind of covers some of the demographics that I'm seeing within our participants.
Thank you, Teresa. So understanding kind of, the general characteristics of SNAP participants and SNAP E&T participants, this, you have an opportunity to kind of just jot down some characteristics of the people that you serve. So you don't have to answer each part of this question, but just, if you want to chime in about, maybe your thoughts or estimates about how many of your participants are SNAP E&T eligible, or what their characteristics are, maybe in relation to what we're talking about or just some general characteristics of the people that you serve, feel free to type those in on Slido. Low wage work, they lack assets. Yeah. Many are SNAP eligible, single parents. So they're thinking about how to cover childcare if they're considering an employment training program, among other things. Demographics closely reflect what we've been sharing.
And then Mary
Single
Nelson
parents.
dropped something in the chat too about many of the providers they work with, the networks they work with show a reentry population is a large demographic that they work with.
Absolutely. Low income, single parents with children receiving TANF. So there's an interesting eligibility point that if it's the child that's connected to TANF and the parent isn't, the parent could still be SNAP E&T eligible. There's some finer points to that, but something to consider. So, this is what we assumed is that, the SNAP people, the SNAP E&T people are really the people that you're serving. And so there's a strong alignment to who you're working with and SNAP E&T. So there's a lot of potential for SNAP E&T to offer some great opportunities and supports for your participants. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Bob, and he's going to pick up in our presentation. And we're going to talk about how SNAP E&T can benefit your participants. There you go, Bob.
I know you said at the beginning to try to keep our cameras on, but because I live way out in the country and my internet doesn't have a wide bandwidth, I am going to make sure that you all can hear me fine. So I'm going to keep my camera off for the time being until we get to the Q&A section. So I think, with SNAP and SNAP E&T, it really can benefit really important to know the benefits of that for your clients, for a couple of reasons. One is that not everybody that's coming in your door is going to be receiving SNAP benefits. But if they are receiving SNAP benefits, it's important that they keep those benefits if you want to take advantage of what SNAP E&T has to offer. So really the main thing as far as SNAP is concerned, of course, is that food security. It's really there to help people with their basic needs for food and providing some nutritious food for them. There is a part of SNAP that is called SNAP Ed or SNAP Nutrition Education that they help folks that are on SNAP, really help stretch their food benefit and buy that nutritious food. And, it offers them recipes and things. So it really helps them, make the most out of their SNAP food benefit. So as far as SNAP E&T, of course, that's a benefit of being on SNAP. And the fact that it provides some good employment and training opportunities. The more providers there are in that network and within the state or within that county that provides the SNAP E&T program, they have those opportunities to really get some good training, and it helps to provide that funding that's so they can expand services and serve more people. And then the support services that comes from SNAP E&T are really important for the individual success. We know that many folks on SNAP have a lot of barriers to employment and barriers to receiving the training need to get the skills they need for good employment. So those support services really come in handy. Things like transportation assistance, childcare, clothing, all kinds of things that, those things can help support. So it's, when you talk to folks about the program, again, it's good to have this information. So when you talk to them about SNAP and SNAP E&T and how important it is, some good things to think about. Next slide. So probably have seen this before, but just to kind of remind you about kind of the different referral mechanisms that are available for SNAP E&T. There is the direct referral method where the individual has, seeking out help from the SNAP agency within the state and trying to apply for SNAP benefits. They are screened by the eligibility worker, not only for the SNAP benefits, but also to see if they are potentially eligible for the SNAP E&T program. If they are, then they will make that referral to their SNAP E&T partners, the community partners that they have contracted with to provide these services. And then the community partner in turn will assess the individual to make sure that they are fit, of course, for their programs, and put them into the right program and the right services that individual needs. In the reverse referral process, the point of entry for the individual, of course, is directly with that service provider who does that assessment, initial assessment, to see what programs they're right for and to make sure they have the right fit, and then make the referral back to the SNAP agency so they can verify first their eligibility to make sure they're receiving SNAP benefits, and then if they are the right fit for SNAP E&T, they will enroll them in SNAP E&T and then get that information back to that provider. So make sure they complete that cycle. Next slide. And then with the eligibility verification process for the Community Action Agency, they are making sure they intake the individual. And again, this is going to be a continuous cycle from month to month to make sure the person is continuing to receive SNAP benefits so they can continue to be eligible for SNAP E&T. The Community Action Agency will make sure they're enrolled in the program and then verify their eligibility with the SNAP agency, and again, make that referral if necessary. And then if they are serving that person, they will make sure they're on their billing roster so they can get reimbursed for the services they provide for that individual. And again, ongoing month to month to make sure that person stays eligible. I want to pause here for a moment and pull Teresa into the conversation and see, Teresa, if you have anything to add to this, how, first of all, you talk to your participants about SNAP and SNAP E&T, and then how this enrollment process works for you.
Yeah, so we also at TriCap have a SNAP outreach program where we are receiving funding from the state for purposes of providing SNAP application assistance. So that really makes a lot of sense for participants that we're working with, people that are calling in. We do attend outreach efforts to let people know about SNAP, and we can do like on-site application assistance. So we have our counselors, we have a central intake person, a program referral assistant, and they all participate in this process of providing referrals to not only the SNAP program, then to eventually other programs within our pillars, including SNAP E&T. So that is a great kind of support system that we have. So we're helping people on, I guess you could say, a continuum of services from basic needs on down the road to other supportive case management programming.
Yeah, that's a good point, Teresa. Thanks for sharing that. I think what we're hearing from a lot of providers across the country, that it really helps if they can kind of get in that system to be an outreach provider as well, because they can help their participants, sign up for SNAP. The SNAP agency really helps educate them on SNAP policy and kind of, how help a person become eligible for SNAP. So I think that's an important point. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, I think, with the SNAP outreach program, we've had that program for many more years than even SNAP E&T, of course. And I think that most CAP agencies are providing the service. So applying for that grant funding would make a whole lot of sense to get the support needed to provide that sort of assistance. So I really enjoy working with that grant as well.
Good point. All right. The next slide. So just some typical obstacles that we see as far as SNAP E&T participation. Of course, if they're not eligible for SNAP, like Susan mentioned earlier, then of course they're not going to be eligible for SNAP E&T. And some of the things that might make them ineligible for SNAP, of course, one of the most obvious one is that their income is too high. It's over the income limit. And for most states, well, the national income limit is 130% of federal poverty level, but states could put some options in to where they could make that income level higher by going what they call broad-based categorical eligibility, and they could have a higher income limit. So there are some options available to states to do that. If an individual is living in a facility where meals are provided, if they're institutionalized, then they will not be able to receive SNAP. Some examples of that are somebody who is incarcerated, might be on work release, a pre-release program where they're still, technically considered incarcerated and their meals are being provided, then they could not receive SNAP. Another example is somebody who's in an inpatient drug treatment facility. There are some treatment facilities that are approved for SNAP benefits, but there may be others that aren't. So just something to keep in mind. An individual may not have completed all the steps they need to apply for SNAP. There's some certain verifications they might need to provide. And if they haven't provided those, then they would either be denied or they would be sent some sort of notice telling them they need to verify some information. There may be confusion over, what address they should use, if they just have a PO box. Usually the SNAP agency wants to see a physical address where they physically live. So there may be some confusion over that. Also, there are certain rules for able-bodied adults without dependents as far as work requirements are concerned. So they may have lost their benefits due to those rules, or if they haven't completed their recertification. So it's important that, if you're working with somebody who's on SNAP and you want to make sure they keep their SNAP eligibility, it's also, it helps to know when they're coming up for recertification, so you can help them with that. As far as SNAP E&T eligibility, of course, we know that folks that are receiving TANF cash assistance are not eligible. And then if they are, assessed by the SNAP agency, like I mentioned before, and they're considered not fit for SNAP E&T, then they wouldn't be eligible for that. Next slide. Before we do that, I think we want to ask Teresa how they do that, how they are making sure that folks are, how they assess folks and making sure. Go ahead.
Yep. Okay, so we are able to use a system and have access to a system called Maxis in Minnesota, which allows us to look on the eligibility pieces for SNAP and do a monthly check really easily. So our admin staff does this every month. She will pull open Maxis. We're not able to enter any information into the system, but we're able to identify information, and then we're able to use that information to connect with clients. The participants were able to make sure that they have all of the paperwork necessary for their recertification. We're able to let them know, remind them of a meeting that they have coming up with the county. So we have the ability to review information, connect with our participants, and ensure that they're, remaining on SNAP benefits. And so it's a really nice opportunity for us. And of course, for those that there are some cases that are considered private or protected. And then we have close relationships with the counties to connect with eligibility workers about those cases. So majority we're able to review the information ourselves and communicate that information with the participant. So hopefully that helps answer your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think more and more we're seeing that SNAP agencies are trying to automate as much as possible that process for their community providers to make sure that to help them, assess whether the individual is on SNAP and eligible for SNAP E&T. Next slide, Susan. So some of the concerns you might hear from participants as far as whether they are able to sign up for SNAP or not. One of the big ones that we see sometimes is they're concerned that it might open up a child support case, and they really are not wanting to deal with that at the time. Well, the fact of the matter is most states, and I looked up, and right now is the last I saw, there are only 9 states that have any sort of disqualification for folks that aren't cooperating with child support enforcement. The other states don't do that for SNAP. So that's shouldn't be a concern for them, like I said, in most states. And another one that we hear is that the benefit is so small that it's really not worth the paperwork. Actually, the average benefit right now is about $214 for one person. The maximum benefit is $250. So really, to let people know that it's a good opportunity again to help them kind of supplement their food and make sure they get nutritious food. As far as for folks that are homeless or having moving from one home to another, as far as couch surfing and things like that, it's not. I mean, they have to give an address when they're applying, but it's just important that they keep those addresses updated. There's no reason why they shouldn't be able to apply for and receive SNAP benefits. Because that SNAP benefit is not being mailed to them, it's on an EBT card, so it's automatically deposited on that card for them. So where they're living and the fact that they have to move all the time is not shouldn't be a concern. Next slide. And we're doing a poll. So what conversations do you have with your clients around assessing SNAP or other benefits? I'd like to hear from you on how you do that.
Also, or how you help your clients through some of those concerns that were mentioned above. And while people are chiming in, Teresa, if you want to talk maybe about how you address some of those concerns at TRICAP.
So yes, many of the concerns that were mentioned do come up with some of our clients. And sometimes, making sure that our approach is client focused, client centered. We talked about the best practices that we use with case management, which includes strengths based and identifying the strengths within the household and having a whole family approach. And so when we can talk about SNAP E&T and frame it in a way for them to understand there won't be additional work for them, there won't be additional meetings, they will have the same counselor in the case that they work with us. So they've already established rapport with that person. And of course, we will continue to focus on their homelessness and getting them into affordable, safe housing, right? And as part of our case management, we're identifying all of the different strategies that could help that family. And so as we're approaching, that conversation, we'll talk through those things. I had a client once say to me pretty recently that she can't get a job tomorrow. She is currently homeless, and that's just not a priority for her. And I said, no one's going to ask you to get a job tomorrow. That's not even feasible right now. Housing has to take priority, housing first. And then we'll work on some training and education, different possibilities to increase the potential. And after I had kind of walked through how the program operated, and that it wasn't a pressure-based program, that it was a client-centered program. And that some of the meetings we would, cover housing, some of the meetings we would cover employment and training, and it would be formatted for the needs of the household. And that really, really supports the household and helps them in making a decision about moving forward. So many of our clients are voluntary. We've had a few that have been able-bodied adults without dependents that have some more strict requirements, but a good majority have been voluntary households, as I think many people mentioned earlier, many single parents. And so the work requirements are not there in those cases. So again, we just kind of walk through and have real conversations and build that trust with households to encourage them to take advantage of such a great opportunity for them and their households.
Thanks, Teresa. We'll give everybody a couple minutes to maybe to chime in, either in chat or in Slido, to talk about how you work with your clients on accessing SNAP or other benefits too. I know one thing that we always emphasized in my experience was that they're not going to be doing this independently. One thing I was reading through the Mathematica study, and there was a mention of participants, when participants talked about dissatisfaction with participating in SNAP E&T, it often was associated with the kind of lighter touch options that can sometimes be offered to SNAP E&T participants, where they're just assigned to do job search, and maybe, and in the past, job search wasn't as supportive. But SNAP E&T really requires and offers the opportunity for you to really give them a lot of support while they're participating, and the support services that are available to them. Client-focused, trust, holistic case management, equitable SNAP E&T program. Talk about processes for signing up for benefits, assist in the computer sign up. I think that's mentioned a couple times. Really helping people take on some things that might feel daunting. Even just having to do things online might not feel comfortable for them. Checking in with how the process is going.
I think F&S USDA has really, encouraged states to simplify their application process as much as possible. They're doing a lot of automation as far as verifying income and things like that. That way the client doesn't have to do that themselves. The SNAP agency is doing that, so they really streamline things a lot.
One of the things too that I used to hear in my former experience is the sometimes people didn't want to sign up for SNAP because they didn't feel like they deserved it, and they felt like somebody else needed it more than they did. And there's conversations that you can have about how you're not taking from anybody else if you access this. It's an entitlement program. You are entitled to get this benefit. Everybody deserves to eat. And that, so, having those conversations too with people who might feel like they're not as bad off as somebody else, and that doesn't, they're not going to impact anybody else's eligibility and access, can be an important conversation.
I think that's a really good point. If I could just interject, because we do hear that, especially from the senior population, that there are others that need it more than they do. And so that whole moralization of need comes into play there, where they would never want to take food from a hungry child, right? And so we have to talk about, how this program is underutilized, right? That there are so many seniors and our general population that are not getting access to this resource that is available to them. And other programs like energy assistance are also underutilized. So we do have to walk through those myths quite frequently. And it's really important that we do, so that we have equity and access to the programs, that people are able to access, nutritious food for themselves and their families. And so, yeah, that does come up quite often too.
We got about 5 minutes left, Susan. Do we want to move
Yeah,
on?
we're gonna go on to the last part of our session.
I think, the other thing we want to stress here is that, it's important to establish that good relationship with your SNAP agency. Most SNAP agencies, SNAP E&T, they have a handbook that providers can follow, and it really gives a lot of good information. These have become a lot better over the years as far as making sure that you'll have all the information you need to run a good program and have a good connection with SNAP E&T. It's always good to have a good established point of contact with the SNAP agency to make sure that there's good communication, that your processes are really streamlined, and that you can do what you need to do to make sure that folks are getting the good services. Many SNAP agencies will have a common email site where you can email questions or your concerns or whatever, and they have people that are watching that email address to get back to you. And really, again, working with that SNAP ET agency to make sure you have an efficient process for your referral process, for your invoicing process, and to create that good partnership. And again, most SNAP ET agencies will have regular contact and regular meetings with their providers to make sure they're keeping that good communication, and folks have everything they need to run good SNAP E&T programs. So if we can ask Teresa maybe to talk about quickly the relationship you have with your SNAP agency. I know you've covered that a little bit, but just to kind of wrap it up.
So we work closely with the Department of Human Services, and we have a regional representative that connects with us. They helped us with onboarding. So at the very beginning of our program, they basically helped set us up. They came to our agency, they met with our team, they walked us through the process, they provided a guidebook, which they still do provide guidance, annually. They're always updating materials. They try to keep it as user-friendly as possible. We have a networking group. I always feel like, based on their philosophy and how they operate, that we are able to always connect with them on any issues, concerns, questions that we have. They've always been timely with their responses and providing any sort of technical assistance that we need. So I would say that we have a very good relationship with them. And I know that I speak for many of the other statewide agencies that work closely with the SNAP E&T program at the Department of Human Services. So yeah, I think that that's true across the board. Every agency is trying to really work hard to simplify the process so that it makes it easier for agencies to participate. And certainly we feel like we are very well supported.
Yeah, it's important to have that good connection with the management office, the SNAP ET management office, as well as the local offices. And one way I've seen that works well is, inviting yourself, or getting invited to their local staff meetings to talk about your program, so they're aware of how your programs work and how you can help their SNAP ET participants. Susan, do we want to move on or?
Yeah, we were gonna do another poll, but I think let's skip just to the end and have some Q&A. So we'll just go to the end here. You know, I linked some resources on this last page. They're linked in the last, some of these links are in the last session you had to the SNAP to Skills website, the toolkit, and the data and research page to learn more just about what research has been done in SNAP. But if anybody wants to unmute and have questions, we just have a couple minutes left, but or type in some chat. I want to thank Teresa also for chiming in. Your experience is really valuable to share with the group.
This is Tommy Wheatley. I'll echo what Teresa said as well. You know, we have the program in Kentucky, and I started June of 2020, and for both SNAP, E&T and KTAP program for TANF, we have both programs, and the state managers have been great to work with, very helpful every step of the way when I needed them. Locally, I'm invited to participate in the case managers meetings, which I do. I invite the local state person to participate in our staff meetings, which she does. So it's just, it's a great organization. I mean, the partnership is great. You're not on your own. You've got people that are the experts, if you will, from staff that are helping you along the way.
I would guess many of you might already have a relationship with your SNAP agency. And so this would be, you know, you can be building on that connection already. You know, just make sure that you have a good, strong connection as if you become a provider.
I know when I was running the SNAP program here, SNAP E&T program here in Washington, I sat right next to the person that managed the outreach program. So was able to get a connection that way. So yeah, if you're already an outreach provider, you have that connection with your SNAP agency. It's, you know, just like the person that's running SNAP E&T right might be sitting next to that person. So
I think we're at time. Steph, any parting words for the group?
One, thank you all so much for showing up and participating. These sessions, as you are kind of figuring out, we're going a little bit deeper and deeper each time we meet. And then we'll go even further deeper when we meet with your states, all the community action agencies in the cohort that are in your state. But Teresa, thank you so much for your input. I know a few of you I've tagged to, you know, join us in future sessions. Again, this was recorded. The link and slides will be sent to the entire cohort, whether you're here or not, and feel free to share those with your staff. But thank you again. The next time we will meet, again, will be on the 13th of January, so not December 16th. We will have another great session, but thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone.
have great holidays.
Take care.
See you all next year.
Okay. When I was teaching, I would say, no homework for the rest of the year. And people were like, oh, that's amazing. And they're like, wait a second. That was perfect. Mary was